Hello and welcome back to the Motorsport Baithak podcast. I'm your host DD, and joining me once again today is my friend and your co-host Vedant. On this episode, we will be talking about the F1 Iberian Peninsula doubleheader taking place in Portimao and Barcelona. So, let's grab some chai, take our seats, ready our opinions, and dive right into the conversation. Hello Vedant. Finally, we have a doubleheader of F1 weekends. Finally, we don't have to wait 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or which feels like forever to get some more F1 racing under the belt. Um, what are your thoughts going into the weekend?
Well, hello Divya. Absolutely. It's been 2 weeks since it's going to be 2 weeks since the race in Imola, and it, as you said, it feels like forever. But heading into Portimao and Spain, I believe we can see the most competitive racing, which like obviously the season is going to be very competitive as a whole, but after Barcelona, the pecking order might just settle down a bit because the teams will start focusing on the 2022 car, and these two races will be crucial for these teams to cement that edge over their direct rivals.
Yeah, you bring up two very interesting points there, Vedant. So the first being obviously the fact that we should have a clearer pecking order at the end of these two races, especially after Spain. And secondly, the fact that most teams will probably want to stop developing their cars or have a better idea of how well the cars are performing after Spain and should stop developing in the next two weekends. We remember that Ferrari did say at the start of the season that they'll stop developing the 2021 car after Spain. Um so there's a lot to look forward to it. Which again, coming back to the first point about the pecking order. So last year the midfield was much closer with Racing Point, McLaren, Renault. You know, basically trading punches. You could say. One of the teams were faster one place, one of the other teams were faster in the other place. However, this season I feel the pecking order is much more distinct between the teams. On the top, obviously we still have Red Bull and Mercedes fighting, and it does seem that Mercedes has clawed back a lot of performance from their, from how they performed in Imola, but Red Bull does still seem to have the edge. However, lower down the order, we see that McLaren definitely has the best race pace, even though they haven't been able to put the qualifying together. Whereas Ferrari would slot right underneath them, and then AlphaTauri followed by Alpine and Aston Martin, which is a little bit iffy. We haven't seen Alpine or Aston Martin grab a lot of points. They've been trading punches over the last two races, so not a whole lot of performance coming from them. So it's hard to tell them apart where they're on the grid. But definitely, you could say that the pecking order in the middle is right there with McLaren, followed by Ferrari, followed by AlphaTauri, and then in the bottom it's probably more like Alfa Romeo, Williams, and then Haas. So a much clearer pecking order this season. However, the racing has still been exciting, thankfully. Uh, what I wanted to get your view on though was also about AlphaTauri losing points in the first two Grand Prix, even after showing a lot of pace both during testing and um, during the practice sessions and qualifying, but not making it not getting it together during the race.
Yeah, certainly. We saw in Imola, Yuki Tsunoda had a miserable weekend, and Pierre Gasly's strategy certainly did not help him. And you're right, because as AlphaTauri only have 8 points, and they are just 3 points above Aston Martin, which is not the real, which does not display the real pace. Yeah. So I really hope they do get their act together. Yuki Tsunoda obviously is a rookie, but he needs to make better judgment in a way, and they need to get those performances together to grab those points and not lose points consistently, because at the during testing we hope that AlphaTauri were right there with Ferrari and Mercedes and McLaren fighting for P3, hopefully, but as of now they're still fighting for P5, which is a disappointment to say the least.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. You can see Ferrari and McLaren took away a total of 75 points from the first two races, right? With Ferrari having 34 of those and McLaren with 41. And you could technically argue that AlphaTauri, even if they finished let's say, ninth and 10th in both races, they would have a few more points, if not more, had they gotten the strategies, had they gotten the weekend together, basically, and especially on the Sundays. So I think AlphaTauri would have been up there with Ferrari and McLaren had they, especially like if Pierre Gasly hadn't had a terrible Sunday on both the past weekends, and they would have been contending for what would have been at least the fourth place on the constructors' championship rather than being 26 points behind Ferrari. So I think AlphaTauri is basically wasting their chances of having easy points before the rivals in Alpine and Aston Martin catch up to them eventually through the course of the season. One thing about Yuki, you mentioned, like everybody has come on Twitter and say, Yuki is overhyped and whatnot, and he needs to make better judgments. But remember, the last Red Bull driver who got such criticism is the lead Red Bull driver right now. Max Verstappen crashed 7 times in the first 7 weekends, and now Absolutely. he is the world favorite for the world champion this year. So Yuki might just be one such other character, but definitely you want the rookie to do well. You want him to perform well and prove himself. But I don't think Red Bull are going to move Yuki around, even if he doesn't perform well this season that much, as long as he's showing some raw pace on the track. But yeah, nonetheless, we do want Yuki to finish in the points and, perform well. Now, Portimao last year was an interesting race. So just a little recap about the races from last year so that we remember, what happened last year and what we can expect a little bit this year. Portimao was definitely a little later on. It was in late October, so not the same time frame. But the Portimao race had a lot of interesting features. Lewis Hamilton won his 92nd race, giving him the title of the most race wins in F1. And this weekend, Lewis Hamilton has a chance to score his 100th pole and become the first person ever to have poles in 3 figures. Last year, Charles Leclerc drove a brilliant race and qualified brilliantly in 4th. And finished in 4th. Similarly with Pierre Gasly, once again, Pierre Gasly had done really well in Imola last year, and failed in Imola last year after qualifying well. Same thing happened this year, and similarly in Bahrain. And once again, Pierre Gasly has been presented with an opportunity in Portimao where he did well last year to do so again, finishing 5th last year for AlphaTauri too. And Sebastian Vettel too had a great race in Portimao, finishing the points. One of the very few times he did so during the course of the season last year for Ferrari. So yeah, a lot to look forward to. And again, once again coming back to Pierre Gasly, that man has the potential. He just needs to get his Sunday together. And then Carlos Sainz, once again, he performed well in Portimao last year, finishing 6th for McLaren, and we are hoping to see a little more pace for him this weekend moving forward. Now let's talk about Landon Norris and Daniel Ricardo. Landon Norris didn't have a great weekend in Portimao last year, finishing 13th, although Daniel Ricardo did finish in the points behind his teammate Esteban Ocon at the time. So what can we expect from Landon Norris and Daniel Ricardo going to this weekend? So far, they've had a very clean season, all in all. There have been no crashes, they haven't had any penalties, they haven't had any bad luck so far. It's been a pretty clean weekend. Obviously, Daniel Ricciardo has struggled in the car a little bit, but Portimao, could that be a game changer for Daniel Ricciardo, or moving to Barcelona, which is a track that all the drivers know well?
Yeah, I think Barcelona will be a good reality check for all these drivers and all these drivers who have moved teams. It will always also be a good check and good benchmark for the teams to judge their cars from last year. But going into Portimao, I personally don't believe that Daniel Ricciardo can quite step up his game right now, because as we know, Portimao is a very tricky and undulating circuit, and to get if you're already struggling with your car on a circuit like Bahrain, and like Imola obviously was a tricky weekend, but still Portimao might be a bit trickier to get to grips with the car. But coming on to Lando Norris, he has been in the form of his life for the past 2 races. His race in Imola was sensational, and he clawed those points away from the top two teams. And now that is something which we need to keep in mind going forward, because McLaren and Ferrari are going to claw back those points. And if any of those two teams, Mercedes or Red Bull, if by chance they have a driver behind the Ferraris or the McLarens, that is what will change the championship very much over the course of the season.
Definitely. We saw Lewis Hamilton lose a lot of time behind Landon Norris during the Imola weekend. Obviously, the conditions were different, but you could see that the McLaren could hold up even in those tricky situations against a really fast Mercedes.
Certainly, yeah, and I think the Ferrari and the Ferrari and McLaren rivalry, which goes back ages, is starting to come alive once again. For the past few years, Ferrari were the top three, McLaren were lagging behind, but now both of them are firmly in the midfield and vying vying to be in that perfect place at the perfect time to grab any podium position or even a win.
Absolutely, you made a really good point there, both about Ferrari and McLaren, and about the fact that it's going to be a tricky race for all the movers in Portimao, all the drivers who moved teams over the last season. Now, moving on to Barcelona and recapping what happened in 2020, it was a difficult race for Charles Leclerc. He had that seatbelt issue, and it was brought to everyone's notice that the FIA didn't take note of that, and he was not penalized for it, although he did ended up retiring. Sebastian Vettel had a surprisingly great race in Barcelona, finishing 7th for Ferrari, so on a one-stopper. So that was pretty good on his part, and Carlos Sainz once again kept his streak going of finishing the points in P6 for McLaren at that time in Barcelona. So we can expect a lot more from Carlos Sainz going into this weekend. I feel he loves the Barcelona track, and hopefully that will allow him to get to grips with his Ferrari and finally, show some ultimate pace in that car. Valtteri Bottas had a hard time in Barcelona last year, but the two racing points did finish 4th and 5th. Sergio Perez had a great race, and I feel Sergio Perez really needs to perform in Barcelona this year. I think it'll be, like you said, it'll be a benchmark for the drivers who move teams, and I think this Sergio Perez's race in Barcelona will go to show as to how comfortable he is with the Red Bull. Per se, last year Alexander Albon did not have a great time in that car. He finished P8 after starting P6 in Barcelona, so not that great. But Pierre Gasly also made it into the points in Barcelona. So again, another two back-to-back scoring opportunities for Pierre Gasly. Landon Norris again had a disappointing race in Barcelona last year, finishing P10. So not the best Iberian GP weekend from last year for Landon Norris, but hopefully he'll turn things around with the current form he is in. Anything else you want to touch on about these two weekends?
So we haven't touched about the teams further down the order, right? And I think it's high time that Alpine and Aston Martin have been scoring points. Lance Stroll has scored points in both the weekends, but it's high time that Sebastian Vettel and Alpine, the entire team, get their act together, because if they want to challenge that midfield, if they want to challenge AlphaTauri and Ferrari and McLaren, I think 2 races were enough to lag behind. If they lag behind more, it will be game over for them.
Yeah, definitely, and they've been struggling and languishing in Q2. You could say almost they haven't been able to get into Q3 very comfortably. And
another thing, Kimi Raikkonen had a brilliant race in Portimao last weekend. He started P17, P18 in his usual position.
Well, he didn't have a great race. He had a great first lap, and then he did finish out of the points though. But he did have a great first lap.
Yeah, we can only hope that Alfa Romeo, with the pace they are showing right now, a better pace than last year with that new Ferrari power unit, can fight with Alpine and Aston Martin for the last few points positions.
Yeah, although with the current pace that Alpine and Aston Martin are showing, you would imagine that they would not finish in the points if AlphaTauri were able to get their shit together, because if AlphaTauri gets their shit together, they're literally sealing the points finishing positions because
you have 5 teams.
because you have Mercedes, you have 5 teams that should finish in the points theoretically with Mercedes, Red Bull, McLaren, Ferrari, and Alfa
So
Tauri.
exactly,
But coming back,
if these lower midfield teams, like whoever is leading the lower midfield, will get those 2 extra points if there's an incident further up ahead. So you need to be in P11 at any given moment of the Grand Prix.
absolutely, I totally agree with you. Alpine did come out after the Imola GP though, and they said that the upgrades didn't work, weren't designed specifically for Imola, and it didn't show the true potential of the upgrades. So that will be interesting whether to see whether Alpine was just being defensive on their part or whether they truly meant what they said, and to see if there's any performance gain over these 2 weekends. But the biggest news I feel this weekend has been about Red Bull making moves behind the scenes, poaching Ben Hodgkinson from the Mercedes AMG F1 team. And there have been rumors that Ben Hodgkinson has been trying to get people at Mercedes to come along with him to join the Red Bull engine program, which will be its independent program starting 2022 when Honda leaves F1 at the end of this year.
Yeah, certainly Ben Hodgkinson has been with Mercedes for the past 20 years in that Formula One power unit program, since back when it was called Ilmor, and that experience is certainly going to pay dividends for Red Bull very much. And I mean, you could say that Red Bull obviously is paying him more to get him to design the engines, but that is the competition and that is what Red Bull wants to do, because they don't want to be a customer team anymore. We have seen it from the Red Bull management that their comfort level with Honda right now is too high, because they can get whatever they want. They can extract whatever they want from Honda. So unfortunately Honda is leaving, but Red Bull still want to be their own bosses in terms of the power unit, and that is why they want to make all that investment into it.
I mean, yeah, and one could argue that the Red Bull Honda engine in 2021 is the class of the field with the pace that Red Bull is showing on the straights and over in Imola and Bahrain. So you could argue that, especially the qualifying pace. But another interesting question that comes to my mind is the fact that is Honda's move to F1 like Red Bull being forced to have their own engine development program because of Honda leaving F1? Is that putting Red Bull into a new era of their time in F1? Is this going to be redefining for Red Bull, because finally they will be a true constructors team with their own engine and their own chassis? So will this be era defining for Red Bull moving into the future? Because we don't know what's going to happen in 2025. We know we're looking at sustainable fuels. We know we're looking at some engine changes, power unit changes. But could this be era defining? Could this be what forces Red Bull to be a true constructors team for the rest of the time, for the rest of their time in F1 at least?
Well, it certainly is a new era for them, because I think even McLaren have never had their own engine program. McLaren have always sourced the power units from elsewhere. Like like the deals with Honda and Mercedes were factory deals, but still they source those power units from elsewhere. And with Red Bull putting in that investment to build their own power units, we have the engine freeze right now, but they certainly would hope to build their own power units for the next regulations. That would be where they need to get it right, because right now they'll use the Honda power unit, which will go on for 5 years, but 2 years, whatever, 3 years, but that 2025 power unit regulations will be key to their time as an engine manufacturer.
Yeah, but I'm asking this. I asked this question because poaching someone like Ben Hodgkinson from the Mercedes team is no mean task, right? And Red Bull have come out and said that they want the best in the business to be on the Red Bull engine program. They're looking for the best talent that is out there, and that to me shows intent to the fact that Red Bull are trying to commit to a long-term engine development program, which means they will want to manufacture and design their own engines in the future. They might again go back to third parties like with like AVL or like a consulting firm, or maybe even go back to another engine manufacturer and have a deal with them later on. In 2025 or so forth. But this definitely shows intent to the fact that this is a long-term investment, and this is not only up till 2025 or like a 3-year, a temporary deal for them.
Yeah, definitely,
But
because Red Bull had that taste of success for the 4 World Championships, and they want that success again. They couldn't get that, those titles with a customer team, and during those 4 titles, Renault was essentially a factory supplier for them, and that is the comfort level they want to operate at. So
absolutely, and I can't wait to see what the Red Bull engine program produces. Well, that's all for my side about this weekend. Vedant, any closing thoughts from you?
I think these 2 races are going to be very important for all these teams to, as I said, to cement their place in the standings and go ahead and start investing start spending time on the 2022 regulations. So I just hope that we don't see any underperforming drivers and cars.
Absolutely. Well, let's see what happens this week, these weekends. Well, thank you, Vedant, for joining me today here to talk about F1, and thank you to our listeners for listening to us. And we'll catch you on the next one.